All right. Hi, everybody. We today are going to do some social studies, and we're going to be working on social studies for the next couple weeks. So, we are starting chapter 3 in social studies, which is all about early land and people to Pennsylvania. So, a long, long, long time ago. So, before we get started, here's what our plan is for right now. We are actually going to be reading, and I'm going to read it to you, but you're going to be following along. So we just want to review some nonfiction reading strategies. Social studies is a really hard topic to read because it is nonfiction, and a lot of times when we read just a fiction story, we can make a movie in our head, we can visualize, we can ask questions. It just kind of makes more sense. It is a little bit easier for us to read. Whereas nonfiction is a little bit trickier because we lack a lot of background knowledge on this information, so it's kind of just brand new. And you also can't really visualize or make a movie in your head because doesn't have a plot mountain. There's no problem, solution, or characters. So our 3 strategies that we're going to be thinking about is if I read something and I'm confused, I have to go back and reread it to help with my comprehension. No one just reads a social studies chapter in their book and then it's just like, oh, I remember everything that I read. It's a lot of dates, information, vocab. You oftentimes have to go back and reread, and that's totally fine. Chunking. I know that we for some reason hate chunking, even though it just requires you to write like 4 words down, but chunking is a really, really great strategy, especially with nonfiction, because if you, after you read a paragraph, write down a chunk, you will check to see, A, if you understood the text. So if you can write something down, that's good. If you're like, I don't know what to write down, then you need to reread. And it also, at the end, helps you so that you don't have to keep rereading the entire thing over and over and over again. The chunks help you pull out the most important information. And then highlighting is also really important because as we read, if we find a word that we don't know or like a vocabulary word that we think is important or a date that we think is important, we can highlight it, and that way it just stands out to us while we are reading. So our goal for the day is you have 2 things we're going to do. We're going to read and listen just to the beginning part of this chapter about early Pennsylvania. You are going to need just a piece of paper and a pencil right now just to chunk a few things while we read. And then at the end, you're going to be making kind of like a drawing or a video based off of some vocabulary words that we have read together. So you can't do that unless you listen to the nonfiction reading for chapter 3. So just a quick thing, this is just lesson 1. The title of this lesson is Solving an Ancient Mystery. We are way, way, way in the past. So we're going back millions of years ago in Pennsylvania when there were giant plants and animals that were living in present-day Pennsylvania. And then we're also, which is going to fast forward a little bit, but not too far, to 12,000 years ago, when the first people actually came through Pennsylvania and were traveling in our area. Okay, so we're going way back in the past. So there are millions of years ago, plant and animals, and then about 12,000 years ago were the first people. Okay, so we're going to just do a quick little opener. You don't need to draw or write or do anything. It says, do you enjoy a good mystery? Scientists who study ancient cultures solve mysteries by exploring and by digging for answers. Imagine that you and other scientists are studying the remains of an ancient culture. Your search leads you to an open pasture, and a pasture is like a field. There you use special tools such as chisels and shovels to find and study ancient objects. Look around, what do you see? So actually these are real jobs you could actually have if this is interesting to you, is that if you go back to like a field and you can use shovels and tools and you can dig things up, and we're trying to figure out what we find, how that can teach us about the past. It says first you find an ancient stone spearhead. Digging deeper, you uncover the bones of animals that people probably hunted with these spearheads. Once you piece together all the clues, Pennsylvania won't seem like such a mystery at all. So as we're reading, we're going to be thinking about how the land that we have now in Pennsylvania is really different than the land millions of years ago or even thousands of years ago. But what we're going to learn about is how people today dig and find things in the ground, and we can dig up like bones or maybe like a spearhead or pottery or things like that, and it can help us learn about people who lived a long, long time ago. So here's a photo, a text feature, and a caption, and the caption says, tools such as brushes, picks, and hammers help scientists learn about Pennsylvania's early history. So these are some of these tools that people use to find things and to learn about our past. All right. quick thing. Our main idea that we're going to be focusing on is this idea right here that millions of years ago, the land we call Pennsylvania, it was not called Pennsylvania millions of years ago. It was just land. It was very different from the place we know today. So we're going to learn about some different plants, some different animals that all lived a long, long time ago that are no longer around today. Okay, so Pennsylvania has changed over the past million years. One place we're going to be talking about is Meadowcroft Rock Shelter, which is located in like western Pennsylvania. We're going to talk about that. And here's our vocabulary that I really want us to focus on today. Knowing and understanding what a fossil is, a paleontologist, an artifact, and an archaeologist. Two things right now I hope we're knowing about paleontologist and archaeologist is I see two roots that I already know. I see the suffix ist on both of those, and I know ist is someone who does something. So I know that like a scientist is someone who like works with science. I know an artist is someone who does art. So a paleontologist is a person, and an archaeologist is a person. And then I also see that ology part thing, that ology right there. That's, I know, is the study of. So I know it's somebody who studies something for both of them. So keep that in mind. And two other terms that we're just going to be hearing is the Pennsylvanian period, which is a time period that took place a long time ago, and something called a trilobite, which maybe you've heard of and maybe you haven't, but we're going to be reading about those right now. Okay, so you're going to need, I'm just going to read this to you, but you are going to need a pencil and a piece of paper, and we are going to read and talk about kind of the main things that are happening here in this section. So this is just called Clues to Our Past. Again, the heading gives us a clue about what we're going to read about, so obviously we're going to be reading about past and different maybe clues about what we can learn about the past. All right, it says, think about some of your baby pictures. Now think about what you look like today. You have changed a lot since you were born. Over time, the land of Pennsylvania has also changed. That kind of sounds like a hook almost, so I'm hoping we can all relate to this. I'm not going to chunk anything here because I don't really think there was any new information. One way we learn about early history is by studying fossils. A fossil is the preserved remains of a plant or animal from long ago. Examples of fossils are dinosaur footprints, shells, skeletons, and leaf prints. A scientist who learns about the past by studying fossils is a paleontologist. I'm going to pause right here, and I want you to write down, if you can, what you think that whole paragraph was about. Like one couple words. Like basically, this paragraph was about what in particular. I don't have a highlighter tool right now, but if I did, I would highlight what a fossil is, and I would also highlight what a paleontologist is, just because it seems like those are two words that I should know. All right, so if I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking I would chunk that this whole thing's about fossils would be like kind of the big word I'm pulling out. I think the whole paragraph's about fossils. So I would write that the whole paragraph, fossils, maybe I would say that we study fossils. Actually, instead of saying we, I'm going to say paleontologist. Study fossils to learn about the past. And I think that that's kind of what the whole thing's about. I know that they also give us examples of fossil, and they tell us what a fossil is. So just keep in mind that a fossil is an old preserved remains of a plant or an animal from long ago. So a fossil can be, it's something that's dead, but it could be a plant or an animal. But fossils look a little different. So here are some examples just to give a visual. A footprint is a fossil because what happens is when the dinosaur like stepped in it, it hardened, and then that footprint got preserved. So that would be an example. A shell is a fossil. A skeleton, so bones, would be a fossil. And leaf prints would be a fossil. So then we have people who actually just study fossils, or somebody called a paleontologist, and that's their job, is to go find fossils and study them and learn about them. Okay? Let's read the next paragraph. It says, by studying fossils, paleontologists have learned that giant plants and animals once lived in what is now Pennsylvania. Many scientists believe these plants and animals lived in dense forests during the Pennsylvanian period millions of years ago. During this period, the climate was warmer and wetter than it is now. At the end of the Pennsylvanian period, most of these large plants became extinct or died out. Some animals, such as the trilobite, a shelled sea creature, also became extinct. So I want you to pause it. I want you to write down what you think that paragraph was mostly about. So again, the first paragraph was mostly about fossils and what a fossil is and explaining it. I think this paragraph's a little bit different. So pause it and press play when you're ready. I'm going to say this next paragraph was about Pennsylvania long ago and what Pennsylvania looked like. So I'm going to write down what plants and animals lived in PA long ago. Okay, so I could write down some examples if I wanted to in my chunk. So they said giant plants and animals. So I know now today we don't really have any giant plants. Like we have trees, but they're not giant plants. And we don't really have any giant animals, which I'm assuming they were talking about dinosaurs or mammoths or something along those lines. I don't know, but I'm picturing we don't really have any giant animals that live in Pennsylvania now. I also know that Pennsylvania, it says, was covered in dense forests. So again, obviously now we don't live in dense forests because a lot of people live here and we've chopped a lot of that down. But what I also remember reading is that a lot of these things are now extinct, obviously, because over a period of time they didn't last. Another thing that I think is important that I'm going to write down is that the climate was warmer and wetter. So that means that obviously it was warmer all year round a long, long time ago in Pennsylvania, which is something that we have different now because we have winter and stuff. And it also was wetter, which means that it rained a lot more than probably it does now. Okay, so I'm going to keep for that chunk that paragraph's just kind of about what lived in Pennsylvania a long time ago and how it was a little bit different. They also talk about, if I had a highlighter, a trilobite, which we are going to read about later, but it was a shelled sea creature, so that's extinct as well. So there's a lot of things a long, long time ago in Pennsylvania that used to live that are no longer around anymore. All right, last paragraph. When they died, most of these plants and animals were buried in areas that became coal beds. Eventually, some of the remains became fossilized. Today, you can find these fossils in many parts of Pennsylvania. So if I were going to chunk this last paragraph, I would just kind of say how now we find these plants and animals and fossils. So it says that they got preserved in the coal beds, so they got over millions of years. They've been hardened, and now we can find them, if you are a paleontologist, as fossils. We can learn more. Just one quick review question. How was the climate during the Pennsylvania period different from the climate today? And when you think of the answer in your head, stop, pause, and write it down. And I'm hoping that we're realizing that the climate is that it was a lot warmer, and it was a lot wetter, and it rained a lot more in the past than today, where we have our 4 seasons, and we have snow, we have rain, but we also have sun, it gets cold, it gets hot. We have a lot more of a variety in our climate now. All right. Just a little bit of a visual for you what a trilobite is, because that's extinct. Here is a visual of it for you. So I'm going to read the caption first. It says, the trilobite was a shelled animal that may have lived about 500 million years ago. And this is a Pennsylvania, it's our Pennsylvania state fossil. So we have like a state tree, a state bird. We also have a state fossil, and ours is the trilobite. It says trilobites were flat, hard-shelled sea animals that may have lived millions of years ago, long before the first dinosaurs. Most trilobites were less than 4 inches long, but some grew to as long as 1 or 2 feet. Unlike turtles or clams, trilobites had shells that contained 3 sections. When trilobites were alive, parts of Pennsylvania were underwater. Today, many trilobite fossils are found in parts of Pennsylvania. So the reason that we dig up this, it's weird because like, well, this animal was a sea animal and Pennsylvania doesn't have the sea near it. But obviously back then we did have a lot more water. So that's why we could say in this area where it's not water, we could dig up a trilobite because it's a fossil. But millions of years ago, there must have been water in that area. All right, let's move on. This next section is exploring early Pennsylvania. So far we did clues to our past where we learned about fossils and paleontologists and how Pennsylvania used to be warmer, wetter, and had really big plants and animals. Now we're going to talk about the early people who lived in Pennsylvania. So it says Pennsylvania was quite different thousands of years ago than it is today. Animals that are extinct today, such as the mastodon and woolly mammoth, roamed the land. Some people lived there too, but many fewer than today. So far, there's 2 things that I just want to show you is a mastodon and a woolly mammoth. Oops, there's no mastodon. Animal. Okay, so here's a mastodon. This is what it would have looked like. They're extinct now. And then we have a woolly mammoth with another one. And that's what those look like. So again, these are animals that are extinct, but they did live in Pennsylvania thousands of years ago. And there were also some people around at that time. So it said, how did these animals and people arrive? Like, how did they actually get to Pennsylvania? It says, many scientists believe that large animals wandered from Asia to North America across the Bering Land Bridge connecting the two continents. Early peoples depended on these animals for food and followed them. When the Ice Age ended, the glaciers melted, sea levels rose, and covered the land bridge. Today, the Bering Strait, a waterway, separates Asia and North America. So what scientists believe is that a long, long time ago, thousands of years ago, Asia and North America right here. So we have a globe. So remember, the Earth is round. So Asia, if we're over here, and this is the Pacific Ocean, and this is North America. What they think is that there was a land bridge that kind of connected these two. So there was like land that stretched and connected these two continents, Asia and North America. And they think a long, long time ago, these animals were maybe over here in Asia, and these animals traveled and moved to North America. And then the people who lived there also had to follow because the people needed food, and there wasn't like a Wawa or an Acme you could go to. So they had to follow these woolly mammoths and these mastodons, and they followed them across this land bridge. And then eventually, over a long period of time, they settled in different parts of North America. But then what happened is, after the Ice Age ended, and it got really, really cold, when the Ice Age actually ended and it got warmer out, obviously all of the ice melted. And because this ice melted, the sea level rose higher, and we no longer have the land that was connecting these two because the ocean's higher and the ocean covers it. So we call this right here the Bering Strait, and this is the waterway that separates Asia from North America. So again, they think people traveled a long, long time ago from Asia to North America and followed these animals. It says, how do we know so much about life thousands of years ago? Along with studying fossils, we can learn about early times by examining artifacts. Okay, so this is what's really cool about these jobs of being a paleontologist, an archaeologist, which we'll talk about, is that we obviously can't travel back in time to learn about what happened thousands of years ago, but as we find these animal footprints and these bones and these artifacts, we can learn about who lived there and during what time. So here's a map, and that just shows us the route that the people took. But let's read more about how we can figure this out. It says an artifact is an object made by human beings. Ancient spearheads and cooking pots are examples of artifacts. A scientist who studies the lives and cultures of people from the past is an archaeologist. Many archaeologists dig underground at archaeological sites to find remains of life from long ago. An important archaeological site is Meadowcroft Rock Shelter, located in southwestern Pennsylvania. I'm going to pause for 1 second. So again, an artifact is something that a human made. So a fossil is like something that was once alive, and an artifact is something that a person made. So pottery, if you found like forked knives from thousands of years ago. So they're saying a spearhead, if you found like a weapon, like a bow and arrow, those would be artifacts. And the reason that we study those is because if we find a bowl and we can figure out it was thousands of years ago, we can find more out about the people who once lived thousands of years ago. So there's a paleontologist, studies fossils, and an archaeologist studies artifacts. So paleontologist learns about the plants, animals that lived a long time ago. An archaeologist learns about the people and the cultures of the people who lived a long time ago. So we're gonna, there is in Pennsylvania an archaeological site where people, they like dig up and find things. And it says here, archaeologists have found the remains of people who lived in and traveled through this area as early as 12,000 years ago. So that means that people were living in Pennsylvania 12,000 of years ago. In addition to the human artifacts found there, the largest collection of plant and animal fossils in North America was found at Meadowcroft Rock Shelter, which is really cool. So they found lots of plant and animal fossils in western Pennsylvania. So the review question is, how is a fossil different from an artifact? I want you to pause it and write down your answer and press play when you're ready. The answer is that a fossil is the preserved remains of a plant or animal from a long time ago, and an artifact is something that was made by human beings that we can use to learn about their lives. So quick summary, this is the end of the lesson, is that two main things. Millions of years ago, giant plants and animals lived in the dense forests of what is now we call Pennsylvania. And about 12,000 years ago, the first people lived in and traveled through the area of Pennsylvania. Okay, so those millions of years ago, plants and animals, 12,000 years ago, human beings. Right now, what I want us to do is I'm going to give you, we are going to be doing something with these 4 vocabulary words. I want you to pause it and see if you can answer 1, 2, 3, and 4, and put the correct word in the blank and just write down your answers and then press play when you're ready. All right, number 1. A blank is the preserved remains of a plant or animal from long ago. I'm hoping we're realizing that the keywords here are preserved and plant and animal. So number 1 is a fossil. 2 says a scientist who learns about the past by studying fossils is a blank. So I know that the person who studies fossils is a paleontologist. So number 2 is paleontologist. 3, a blank is an object made by human beings. That one is an artifact, so put artifact right there. And 4, scientist who studies the lives and cultures of people from the past, and that is an archaeologist. All right, so here's what you are going to do right now. Your job is you're going to pick one of the following 2 things. You're either going to make a drawing on a piece of paper that incorporates a fossil, a paleontologist, an artifact, and an archaeologist. If you're doing a drawing, you should draw pictures of each of them and incorporate each of these words somehow into your drawing. So you can draw a picture of like animal bones and then put an arrow and label that as the fossil. You can draw a picture of something else and label that as artifact. You could draw a picture of something else, label that paleontologist, draw something else, label that archaeologist. One option is to make a drawing. You don't have to color it, but I want it to be like neat and organized and look really good. And label your words. Or you can make a video that incorporates, and you can act out or do something to explain what a fossil is, what a paleontologist is, what an artifact is, and what an archaeologist is. So it's up to you to decide. Whatever you do, if you do you're going to have to label the vocabulary words on your drawing, or you're going to have to use all the vocabulary words in your video. When you're done, you're going to post your picture of your drawing or your video to Seesaw. So you could, if I were you, if you were going to go to Seesaw, and you only have to go to your journal. So when you log in, you click I'm a student, sign in with Google. Make sure up here that you are in your distance learning classroom. You're going to click the little plus sign if you're doing this. And you have the option. You can either, if you want to do a drawing on here, you can just click drawing and you can do your drawing right on here and submit it to your teacher. If you want to do a video, you can click the video. Oh boy. Oh, rough. I'm looking rough, guys. You're going to do the video right here and you can record it. Or you can post a photo of your actual thing. If you click photo, the only thing that's tricky about it is that you will have to hold up, like pretend this is a piece of paper and you're gonna be like, oh, there's my picture, hold it, click the photo. Or if you have like an iPad, you can switch it and turn it so that it takes a photo of your drawing. Or if you do, actually those are gonna be your only 3. So you can take a photo of it, draw it, or take a video of yourself acting it out or explaining it. And then when you're done, you can post it, and then that is all you have to do today. All right, I hope that we learned about Pennsylvania in the past, and good luck on your poster or video. Bye, guys.